Hello, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. Welcome to the program. Before we get to this week's guest, I wanted to talk about what else? Donald Trump. And specifically, how one combats, how one confronts Donald Trump. How one does not confront Donald Trump is what we saw, unfortunately, in his Meet the Press interview. I don't so much blame the reporter, Kristen Welker, who I think gave it her best. But I think the broadcast and the cable news shows are confused. They have to treat Trump like a defendant on the stand. What they need is a prosecutor, not a journalist whose job is to appear charming and light and put the guest at ease and make sure there are no gaps in the conversation. They have to get a bulldog, someone who's going to go in there, hit a lie, and then come with the receipts. The only reporter, the only journalist who I've ever seen come close to this in the past was Tim Russert, the late, great Tim Russert from Meet the Press, and also Mehdi Hasan, who has done this consistently, not with Trump, but with others on MSNBC. You have to bore down on a specific lie and then come back with the tapes, with the previous statements, with the evidence. Because if you don't, what happens is he filibusters, he lies, he runs on and on and on. Now, granted, sometimes he does trip himself up. After all, in the interview, he sort of confessed that he doesn't really listen to his lawyers. He goes with his gut. And that's damaging from a legal perspective because one of his defenses is going to be advice of counsel. I was just following the lawyer's advice. Well, that excuse is now out the window. So that's not to say that we don't get some valuable information when Trump is blathering on. But if the point is to confront, the point is to expose, the point is to reveal to the American people that this guy, first of all, is incoherent and mentally unstable, and secondly, that he is ultimately a fascist, you're not going to get it by doing the normal sort of interview. And you're really not going to get it by pretending he cares about policy, by asking him, what excites you about policy? You know what excites him? Getting back in power and pardoning himself and wreaking vengeance on his enemies. So I come back to this again because it's important that we not get into the habit of treating him like an ordinary candidate. Now, once in a while, we get handed a gift, and I'll just tell this between you and us so it doesn't get out to the larger audience. But there is such a gift that may have been handed to us. Trump says he's going to skip the next Republican debate. No surprise there. He might be actually asked something that isn't familiar or helpful, or Chris Christie might deliver a blow. Instead, he's going to go and give a talk to the UAW workers. Now, that's an interesting prospect. UAW workers. Well, if he gives them a chance to ask questions, or even if he doesn't, even if there's just an audience where they can shout out, they should take advantage of that. Because unlike a professional journalist, first, they can use obscenity. And secondly, they can ask some really hard questions. How come you don't support a minimum wage increase? How come you had the most anti-labor National Labor Relations Board in history? How come you took overtime away from a whole class of managers, mostly in retail people? How come this president passed infrastructure and green energy that's giving us union jobs, and you say you're against those things? On and on. If you have a real person confronting him, he'll be, I suspect, less able to wriggle around because, in fact, real people don't have these hang-ups that journalists do. They don't have lots of dependent clauses. They don't give him open-ended questions. They ask something specific, and they're willing to call bullshit on him when he doesn't answer, when he gives back a lie. So for all of you out there who are a member of the UAW or know someone who's a UAW member or can reach someone who's a UAW member, I would suggest that they get their list of questions and their lists of comments ready for Donald Trump. Because in a situation like that, it may be the only time we get a direct answer from him and the only time he is taken off guard. Because he has become so accustomed to running rings around the press that when confronted with a real human being, someone whom he is trying to ingratiate himself with, it may be rather off-putting when they come back and point out that he is the the last person that union members should want in the White House. And this, of course, is the great failing of Donald Trump, is that the things he is saying are not popular with the vast majority of people. They are not popular with the electorate at large. They appeal to a tiny segment of people who are marinated in in the toxic juice of Fox News and other right-wing outlets. So while the UAW members are out there, maybe a woman from the UAW, and there are many of them, might ask him, why have you taken away the women's right to choose? Why have you allowed states to pass bans that prevent us from getting critical medical care? Let's confront him, my fellow Americans, when you have the chance, when you are in settings like this, whether it's labor, whether it's abortion, whether it's guns. Why are you in the pocket of the NRA? Why aren't you in favor of reasonable gun control? Use those opportunities to confront him and to catch him. Because sadly, I must say, my fellow members of the media are not going to be the ones to expose Donald Trump. If it's going to happen because a regular, ordinary human being comes up to him and says something or accuses him of something for which he does not have a ready answer. So aside from trials, I think we're going to have to rely on one another to pin down Donald Trump. So if you liked what I just had to say and want to hear more, join us for our guest this week. And please tell your friends to listen and follow at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever they get their podcasts.